You're clean, aren't you? Except for your tower. You're a tower junkie, Roland.
Hello and welcome to Tower Junkies, presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. Tower Junkies is a podcast devoted to Stephen King with a special focus on his magnum opus, the Dark Tower series, occasionally. We discuss the themes, characters, and mythology of the series in Palaver episodes and review the books and comic series in Kef episodes. We also discuss King novels related to the Dark Tower, non-Tower King novels, TV and film adaptations of King's work, and the latest news about potential Dark Tower-related adaptations. You can find more of our work at TowerJunkiesPod.com and follow us on every level of social media at Tower Junkies Pod. I'm your host, Matt Hurt, and with me today, as usual, is my co-host, Tiny.
Hello.
Hi, Tiny. How's it going?
It's going great, man.
That is awesome. We are, we just recorded a special Patreon exclusive, bonus content, which you can find at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Just, if you pledge as low as $1 a month, you get access to a special RSS feed that has, a ton of content built up over there, so you are definitely getting your money's worth, and we're getting money from you, so that would be nice. So that was weird, but yeah, patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. In that special bonus Patreon exclusive stuff, we talked about how we would occupy our time in an Overlook-like resort if we were like the winter caretaker. So that was a fun little discussion, a little window into our lives outside of podcasting. So yeah, check that out at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. But Tiny, we are here this early morning. This is an early morning for us.
Yeah.
We are recording this around 9:30 a.m. on Peek Behind the Curtain, July 4th. But this is the first time in our podcasting careers that we have recorded in an early morning.
Mm-hmm.
So this is new. We have, as you pointed out, I think, were we recording when we were talking about that? I don't know. But when we worked together, we worked nights together, and like we probably recorded an episode or two after work, which would have been in the morning, but it would have been our evening, if that makes sense.
Right.
So yeah. So this is new for us, so hopefully we... Oh my god. So this is new for us, so hopefully we are good with it. But Tiny, today we're starting our Shining series review series leading up to Doctor Sleep here in November. So today we're talking about the Shining novel, which is kind of a behemoth of Stephen King's oeuvre, at least in terms of pop culture awareness and pop culture, awareness. And the, he's, I don't know, would you say that this is the novel that he's most known for?
I really don't know, because I wonder if, this is something I wanted to talk about. I wonder if the pop culture relevance of the film has succeeded or exceeded the novel.
I agree.
I don't know which is more popular. I feel like everyone knows that the movie's based on a book.
Right.
But I feel like most people have seen the movie and haven't read, and a number of them haven't read the book.
Totally.
And so I wonder if, I feel like a lot of people, if you ask them, hey, what's The Shining about? They would reference the memories they would reference would be the film, the movie, as opposed to the book, which the movie's slightly different. Right. It's like, oh, he hunts his family around this hotel with an axe, and it's like, well, no, he uses a roque mallet, really.
Yeah.
It's like, I think that's, I wonder. There's no really way to figure it out, but like it would be, an experiment you'd have to do over years.
Right.
Ask people about, that question and see what they say. But I don't know. I kind of wonder what's more popular, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't know.
Yeah, it's a really interesting kind of thing because...
To answer your question, though, I will say that I think it is his most famous property.
Okay.
So, like, you know.
I agree. As much as I would love the Dark Tower to be the most popular property, I don't think that'll ever be the case.
Right.
But yeah, I would say he's probably best known for The Shining.
Yeah.
And I think you might be right that it is likely at least a bit of that is because of the spotlight that Kubrick's movie put on the property as a whole. Mm-hmm. I got such a feeling of just complete jealousy on Facebook the other day, because Michael Bailiff from with the Witching Season films, who we've kind of collaborated with on Shocktober and Irvington over the years. Mm-hmm. They're by the way, check out Witching Season films. It's amazing. They do the Witching Season, which is a kind of a horror anthology YouTube series that is available on Amazon Prime Video as of this recording. But they just finished or are in the process of finishing filming their first feature-length film that's based on one of their stories from the Witching Season called They Live Inside Us, which we screened the short film at Shocktober and Irvington a year or two ago, to very high acclaim from the audience. And it's also worth mentioning that the title "They Live Inside Us" is based on a Stephen King quote. But I got such a feeling of just jealousy because Michael from the Witching Season had posted on Facebook that he and his wife stayed the night at the Stanley Hotel.
Oh, nice.
In Estes Park. Is it Colorado? Yeah.
It's Colorado, yeah.
Estes Park, Colorado, yeah. I was confused because they're from Utah. But anyway, I was like looking through the pictures that he posted, and I was just like, God, I want to go there so bad. I want to just, like, earlier this year, I was like, legitimately like looking up prices for like plane tickets and like just to stay like one or two nights at the Stanley Hotel, which is of course the hotel that Stephen King and his family stayed in, that gave him the idea for The Shining. Yeah. And it's just, oh God, it's a beautiful, beautiful place. But yeah.
Were there any visuals from that hotel used in the movie?
I don't think so.
Okay. I can't remember.
Yeah,
because I know that in the movie, like, it was like they built sets and stuff like that, but they did film at some actual hotels.
They did. I don't think they didn't. Here's the thing that I think that I'm right on this, and we'll know as we go through these episodes. So the next episode we'll get more clarification on this. But if I remember correctly, Kubrick did not film anything at the Stanley Hotel, but I want to say that the mini-series was filmed at the Stanley Hotel.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think. Check out next episode, the next two episodes, and we'll get more clarification on that.
Okay.
But anyway, I was so jealous, and like earlier this year, I had looked up like what it would take to like get there, and like I would have to fly into like Boulder and then rent a car and then like drive like 50 or 100 miles or so, a ridiculous amount of mileage, and like I was like I could maybe do this if I plan it right. I could maybe do this, but I was like, it's essentially like I would just go to stay at a hotel for like 2 days and then go home. It would be like I couldn't really justify it, but I don't know.
It'd be fun to do if you like were visiting Denver for a while, or visiting Colorado, smoking some weed or something, and you could just like make a couple days of it or something. Yeah, that's what it would be useful that way or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what he was doing. I think they were like on a trip or something. They were just going through like there, and they took a detour and stayed the night. Yeah. So yeah, just really, I want to do that. That's on my bucket list eventually. So
that'd be cool.
We'll see. But Tiny, we're talking about The Shining today. So this novel is, I've said it before on this podcast. I believe it's the first Stephen King novel I ever read.
Okay.
and I've told this anecdote before, so I'll just kind of breeze past it. I read it in the middle of the day at home, and like my parents like came home or something, and it's like the middle of the day, and just them opening the door like just jolted me. Like I jumped like so much because I was so wrapped up in the book. Was this one of the novels that you read from the library and that summer that you would bike to the library and back?
It actually wasn't.
Interesting.
But my first reading of The Shining was sort of inspired by becoming a Stephen King fan that summer, because that was like the summer before, I think, 7th grade that I did that. And we had an assignment for English class. And like we had to pick a book, and it was like a book report type thing, I think. And I chose The Shining, and the teacher approved it. I don't know why. I was 12.
I just imagine your book report, like little 7th grade Tiny's book report, like, and the ghosts dressed up like animals, and they were unmasking each other, and like they said that there was something that was going on after that, but I didn't know what it was.
Yeah,
they were making babies, I think.
Yeah, so that's what I read it for that, and that's the last time I read it too.
That is nuts.
Yeah, first and last time I read it. So
when you read it in 7th grade, was that before? I would imagine that you hadn't seen the movie, right?
No, I had not seen the movie.
How'd you feel about the book when you read it?
I mean, I loved it. It scared the crap out of me when I was a kid. I really liked it, and I don't know why I waited so long to reread it. I really don't. I can't justify it, but like I think I said in earlier episodes of this podcast that it's been more than half of my life ago that I read it.
Yeah, that is nuts.
That's not like it was literally 20 years ago that I read it.
Jeez.
So that's a strange notion, I guess, that it's been 20 years since I read it. But yeah, like it's one of those rare occasions where like I had something I had to read for school, that I like finished reading it way before it was due or whatever, because I was just like so into it. And like I remember specifically the moment or the scene chapter where Danny goes into room 217.
Yes.
Like it was like I stayed up late. That it was like a school night, but I like ended up staying up late and reading that at like midnight, which at the time was late for me. And like I didn't sleep well that night because it was so scary. Like I was just in my room with my light on reading it, and it just that was epically scary. I have a vivid memory of that. So, and it holds up pretty well even as an adult.
Like the that passage in particular where he's going into room 217 and like he sees the bloated corpse in the bathtub, like the way that King writes it, it feels like it's such an ethereal type of like dreamlike thing, and just like I don't know, the way that he describes it is just so out of this world in a sense. Like it just feels like we're in this heightened reality, and it's interesting because it's also from the perspective of a 5-year-old. So that kind of heightens the kind of imaginative quality of it, if that's a word, I think.
Yeah.
Quality. It's but yeah, it's highly effective, and I love the kind of, I guess, reversal or the twist on it when Jack goes into 217, because it's different for him. I love this book so much.
Yeah.
I remember. So I've read this book this is probably my 4th time in my life reading it.
Wow.
Yeah. Maybe 5th actually, but I remember the first time I read it was in around the same time as you described. Like, no. I think it was in high school at that time. I think it was like sophomore year. So like sophomore year, and then the second time I read it was this is fun. The second time I read it was when we were security guards, and I like the only time I had to really read was when I was working overnight in an empty building.
Yeah.
And like it wasn't a hotel or anything, but it was like it's an office building. And like I would just walk around this empty, dark creepy building at night and like take breaks on my patrols and stuff and just read passages and everything. Like I would think I was reading it on Kindle at the time, and like I got to like room 217 in the book, and it was just like it was chilling and scary, and like it gave me this visceral like. Anytime I walked past like a door, like I would think like, oh shit, like I would get like just a tense feeling in my gut. Just like I love that. Like I kind of miss those. I kind of miss working nights.
Yeah.
Like that, especially because I didn't have anything to do. But also just I love that as kind of like additional ambiance for like horror writing that I would read.
Yeah.
So I remember that, and then like the other like 2 or 3 times I've read it is now obviously it was with Audible and just listening to the audiobook. And I've listened to it kind of at my leisure, just like kind of just on a whim. And this time for the podcast. And on Audible, it's read by Campbell Scott, which, God, his voice is perfect.
Yeah, he did a great job.
He really did. It's just very kind of... He's got a very smooth speaking voice that really captures the kind of psychosis of Jack Torrance, I think.
Absolutely. And I think some of his greatest work or some of his best parts are when he's reading Danny, because Danny's so like subdued, and he has a very his demeanor is very much he's like a people pleaser, kind of like he wants to make his dad proud and whatnot, and stuff like that. And so he's very like kind of apathetic and very reserved. But then in the moments, like especially where he's like using his shine to call Dick Halloran, and he's like, Dick, please come, please, we need you here, or whatever, and like it's so bad and it's scary or whatever. Like it genuinely felt like a 5-year-old who was in distress. Like it was very, like just the balance between those two emotions with a 5-year-old were really well done on his part.
Totally.
And Jack especially. That was incredible, because Jack is just this normal guy, and he's very, like when he's talking to Wendy or Danny, he's just a calm, collected guy. But then the drastic change between that and when he loses his temper, or when he goes full crazy at the end, what he did with his voice was just terrific. I mean,
totally.
And in like it was actually like scary, like the way he at the end when Jack is just full crazy and essentially just nuts, and he's lost his mind totally, and it's more than just like lost his temper. He's manic and absolutely like bloodthirsty. Like that gritty, gravelly voice that he used was just perfect, and like kind of scary, frankly. Yep.
Totally agree. And so let's kind of dive into the novel, and let's dive into it by comparing it to the movie.
Yeah.
But when you were reading it this time, since it's been so long since you first read it, did you find yourself like kind of picturing stuff from the movie, or was it like how did the movie affect your reading of it this time around?
More so than I thought it would. I think it's easy to picture Jack Nicholson in that, as Jack, and the little kid from the movie as Danny.
Yeah.
So visually, I think all the visuals are there, which is the best part of the movie. The visuals. That's Stanley Kubrick's signature. He's never lacks in that department with any of his movies. But what really, I had a much better memory of the movie than I did the book, because I've seen the movie a few more times than I have read the book, and I've seen it as an adult and stuff like that. And so I think the biggest disparity between the two is the characterization of the three main characters.
Yeah.
In the movie, Wendy and Danny are kind of reacting to Jack the whole time.
Yeah, they're kind of like helpless characters.
Right. It's the Jack Nicholson show in the movie. And I understand that. But like, I really, to me, the biggest shock was Wendy. I forgot how well-rounded of a character she really is in the book, and how she's very much a woman who's reliant on her husband. She doesn't work, and she's very much a damsel in the book, but she very, very quickly discovers her inner strength and her ability to, how her maternal instincts trump that very quickly. And she really becomes a person of action. Like especially when Jack starts to fully lose it and she locks him in the pantry. I think from that moment forward is such a huge jump for her character, and such an incredible development on her behalf, that she becomes, I think as equally interesting as Danny and Jack as far as characters go. I think she was like, that's what really blew me away, is how relevant and evolutionary her character is in the book, and how the movie just completely lost that. Like, I can't remember the actress's name.
Shelley Duvall.
Shelley Duvall. Yeah. She wasn't that great in the, as far as her being scared and stuff, I think she was fine, but like, I just remember some of the dialogue. She's just so, I'm not a fan of hers, but, but I don't know. I had trouble picturing her as I was reading the book. I pictured somebody else, and it was a generic person. It wasn't anyone specific. So, I hate to say that, cause there's a lot of famous production stories from that movie, and one of them is that Stanley Kubrick was really hard on her, and it's like one of the hardest things she ever did in her life was that performance, and like I think she did pretty well given all that. But if you don't have that context and you're just watching the movie objectively, I don't really care for her performance a lot. Yeah,
I agree. I'm the same way with Shelley Duvall in the movie, but we'll talk about that next time. But
but that's the biggest difference. And I understand if you're filming a movie, not a lot you can do to characterize a 5-year-old. That's really hard to do. Yeah. And so much of the character of Danny in the book is internal monologue and like thoughts, and that's really hard to transfer to film. Absolutely. That's so hard to do. So like I forgive that quite a bit. I understand how difficult that is. But that's just why books are better. Yeah. As far as if you want to boil it down to storytelling, storytelling is always better in written form. And the movie versus the book of The Shining is a great example of that. So, obviously the book is better, and that's almost always the case. But just the characterization was the biggest disparity for me. I'll agree with that. It was, I really like in the book the way that Jack is written, because he is a character who's troubled. He's a troubled character, but it kind of contrasts that with the depiction by Jack Nicholson in the Kubrick movie. It's like, and it's one of the reasons why King doesn't like the movie that much, is that he's just out right from the outset. He's like, he just has that evil look about him. Right. And maybe part of that is just Jack Nicholson, but but like, it's just, that's it's from the start, he's already unhinged, and the way he's written in the book is he is someone who's trying to turn over a new leaf and trying to beat his alcoholism, but is succumbing to the persuasion of the hotel. And what I really love, I'll save that for spoilers, because we'll just kind of do a non-spoiler for the book, but he's just drawn into this darkness that kind of consumes him by the end of the novel. And it's just like, I love that kind of slow draw of him succumbing to the whims of the hotel. Right. Well, and really the hotel just exploits his weakness. Totally. As an alcoholic and a person with a really short temper. And that's something that I appreciated about the book too, is that I kind of forgot about that. I forgot how how he's really kind of, I don't know if I'd use the word conquered his alcoholism,
right?
But he has it under control in the beginning of the movie, and he has a bad temper, and there are several moments in the first half of the book, let's say, where Wendy and Danny get on his nerves a little bit, and we kind of get this internal monologue where he's like, this is fucking annoying or whatever, and he gets a little upset, but he keeps it all internalized, and he basically has his temper and his alcoholism under control, but the hotel exploits that weakness and just makes it worse, and you see as it goes on that Wendy and Danny irk him more and more, and he's slowly losing control more and more throughout, and then eventually they completely turn him against them, and by the end he sees them as, weaknesses that need to be wiped out or whatever,
right? And, corrected,
right? So it's really pretty tragic what happens to him.
It really is, and I'll talk about that in spoilers too. But something that I really enjoyed about the book and thought was really, it's kind of the issue I have with the popularism of Stephen King, that so much of the conversation surrounding Stephen King is like, oh, he's a scary writer, and we've talked about that ad nauseum on this podcast. But here in The Shining, like, The Shining is arguably considered like his scariest novel. And people always equate it to the horror movie The Shining as well, and like that is out and out just horror set piece and everything.
Yeah.
The thing that I think gets kind of lost in the conversation surrounding The Shining as a property is the family drama, the family dynamic that's present in it, because you have these three characters who are isolated and alone, and they have this troubled history. Like, Jack is a recovering alcoholic who along with his friend Al Shockley were, kind of dangerous alcoholics. Like, they hit someone, and there was a hit and run where they hit someone while they were drunk driving, and I don't think that's ever resolved or anything. That's just something that's up in the air in Jack's history. And then also the history with Jack and Danny, where Jack lost his temper and broke his arm, and you have all of these, like, these things working together, and then, like, the troubled marriage between them because of the incident with Danny, and how they've considered and talked about getting a divorce, and just like that, it's not like a broken family, but it's like it's a sprained / like slight fractured family. So it's like slowly,
recovering family.
Yeah. And it's like slowly just getting more and more tense as the book progresses. And like you said, Wendy's characterization in the book is really good because it kind of goes into that portion of it. Like, she is kind of constantly thinking like, okay, well, if I can get Danny out of here and we can go to my parents. And she's like, well, my parents are, like, she doesn't have a good relationship with her parents either, so that kind of is a stumbling block there. But what I really love about this book is the way that it does that family dynamic, and the way that it's, as the hotel gets its hooks into Jack, that family dynamic gets fractured even more. And like when Danny goes into 217 and he comes out of it and he is, injured and everything, that is the payoff. It pays off so well, the fractured dynamic of the family, because Wendy thinks that it was Jack, and Jack freaks out and everything. It's such a great dynamic at play in the book.
Definitely.
Yep. So anything else before we go into spoilers? Because I think we kind of already
creeped in there a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't realize we were doing.
Yeah, we probably shouldn't have worried about it. But yeah.
Anything else before spoilers? No, I think we can cover it all in spoilers, and I think anybody who's going to listen to this has probably read the book.
Yeah, I agree.
Has seen the movie and they're fine with it or something like that,
Yeah, this is one of those Stephen King properties that it feels like you can't really spoil that much.
Right, I think even people who haven't seen the movie or read the book, they're familiar enough with the story that they're not worried about spoilers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go into spoilers here in a second, but I did have some feedback before we go into spoilers. So I posted on Facebook, the Facebook page, at facebook.com/TowerJunkiesPod. I said, hey, we're going to record our review of The Shining, the novel, and we got one comment from a good friend of the show, Robert, in Utah. And Robert says, I think the movie tainted the book for me. I've seen the movie so many times that's how I picture The Shining. I enjoyed the book, but from what I could tell, there were only a few differences. I might need to listen to it again. Listening to books on a graveyard shift doesn't always work right. I tend to space out and forget what I just listened to. Excited to listen to Dr. Sleep, and I'm a big fan of Will Patton, so excited to hear it.
Oh, does Will Patton narrate Dr. Sleep?
He does.
Nice.
Yep. Which I'm excited about.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so thank you, Robert, for chiming in there on the Facebook page. Any comments about that comment?
That's interesting that the movie has tainted the book for him.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it kind of has for me as well, and to an extent. Like I said, like visually, I picture the sets and everything that Stanley Kubrick came up with for the movie, and I picture Jack Nicholson and the young child actor. I can't remember his name.
Danny Lloyd.
There you go.
Yep.
So I remember. I picture them. But I think that's kind of inevitable when you have a movie for a popular movie that's an adaptation of a novel. I think that's kind of inevitable. But I don't know if it's tainted. That's a shame. Because I think, like I said, the book is better than the movie. But that's interesting that it's. I wonder. I'd be curious to hear him expand on that and be like, if it's, how much it's tainted it, or if it's like he can't read the book anymore or something like that. Like I kind of wonder how bad it is. But
nice.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I'll post more Facebook posts like that, and hopefully we'll get more comments and everything as we go through this little review series.
Mm-hmm.
And before we get into actual spoilers, just to clarify that Stanley Kubrick filmed the exteriors scenes in The Shining at Timberline Lodge in Mount Hood, Oregon. And I think that it was a studio set, and I think let me see. Oh, it was Elstree Studios is where he filmed the interiors in Hertfordshire, England.
Right, I think I knew that.
Yeah. And I was right that the 1997 miniseries was filmed at the Stanley Hotel.
Cool.
Yep. So we're going to go into spoilers for The Shining novel here in just a second. So I'm going to play a little bit of music here, and then once we get back, we're going to talk about spoilers for The Shining. So, Tiny, spoilers on for The Shining.
Yeah.
There are a couple of big differences and omissions from the movie compared to the book. So, the first thing I want to bring up is the wasp nest. That freaked me out so much.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that it was incorporated into the miniseries, which we'll talk about here in a couple weeks. But the wasp nest, as I'm terrified of bees, wasps, anything. They're terrifying to me.
I don't know if I knew that about you.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, one of my favorite, well, not favorite things, but one of my great, great mind, Jesus Christ. One of my neuroses, that's the word. One of my neuroses is that I've never been stung by a bee, ever.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so, I've always been just deathly afraid of it. So, I'm always, terrified of bees. I think that stems from just being creeped out by bugs, too, and I just feel like bees are, flying bugs with stingers.
That's fair.
Yeah, but it's funny because, as a kid, I was terrified of being stung by bees or wasps or anything, especially wasps because they were just terrifying.
Because they're dicks.
And they don't die when they sting you.
Right.
At least with a bee, I can be like, hey, you're fucking dead.
Yeah.
But I was so terrified of getting stung by a wasp or a bee as a kid because I was terrified of the pain. But now I'm terrified of being stung by a wasp or a bee because I don't know if I'm allergic to them.
Oh, yeah.
And so, so that's my fear now as an adult. So.
Well, typically, even if you are allergic, it would take like a lot of bee stings to like kill you.
Oh, I've seen my girl.
I was gonna say, yeah. it's sort of the allergy's not as. Mm-hmm. I don't want to diminish anyone's pain or issues, but it's not quite as extreme as some people might think. Like,
sure.
I think my girl sort of tainted that allergy. Like, you have to get stung a ton of times, even if you're allergic.
Think part of that's one of the reasons why I'm terrified of it. Also, because I saw my girl as a young boy. But
it's really not that bad.
Okay,
being stung by a bee.
Good.
It's happened to me multiple times.
Okay.
Yeah. I've never been stung by a wasp or a hornet though, which I hear is more painful.
Yeah, I can. They're bigger and scarier.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that had a particular relevance to me in reading the book.
Okay.
And I love, like, as a set or as a set piece in the novel, like, that's terrifying because it's like, okay, he uses the bug bomb to kill the wasps and everything, and then just the thought of like having this hollowed out wasp nest to give to your kid as like a toy or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's an interesting gesture. It's kind of weird, but to have the hotel like resurrect them or recreate them to sting them and everything is just like, that's such a terrifying set piece. Like, how did you, when reading it this time around, how did you feel about it?
I had completely forgotten about it from the first time I read it.
Nice.
I didn't remember it at all. It didn't have quite the relevance for me because it's not, unlike yourself, I'm not
a pussy.
I'll try to tiptoe around that. No, but it doesn't frighten me to that extent.
Okay.
But yeah, it was a really good set piece or occurrence, kind of an introduction to how the hotel works, I think. Which I sort of have, having read it before and seen the movie, I have some insight into the fact that this is a conscious or a prescient hotel that has, it's not just a hotel.
Yeah.
And so like I kind of got that right off the bat. I don't know if a first time reader would necessarily get that, but
right.
But yeah, it was scary and really, I kind of liked just differences between reading it as a kid and reading it now, but I like Jack's reaction. It's such a dad reaction. He's like, I'm gonna take pictures and sue those bastards. I'm thinking like $5,000 per sting or whatever. I was like, that is such a dad thing to do. Totally. Go get my camera, Wendy. Like, that's just ridiculous.
That
was entertaining to me. That's what I remembered about it most of all. And it's also an interesting point because you see how Danny just kind of, he's a people pleaser, so he just kind of rolls with the punches, and he wants to like be tough for his dad, and stuff like that. And like I said, that's a piece of characterization that I had kind of forgotten from the novel. That's absent from the movie a little bit, at least to an extent. It's not as well realized in the movie. So that moment and that occurrence was pretty key to developing that characterization that I thought was great.
I totally agree. Like when Danny tells Wendy, like, Daddy says we're going to sue those fuckers or whatever he says.
Right.
I don't remember exactly what he says, but yeah, it's like you said, he just wants to please his parents. He wants to make his parents happy. And I think that stems from him having The Shining, where he knows how unhappy they are and everything. Like that's a natural reaction to that, is that he wants them to be happy, so he wants to make them happy and everything. It's just like the way that King writes a 5-year-old is just really, really strong and poignant.
Well, a 5-year-old who's forced to deal with adult or extreme emotions, because I think part of The Shining is the actual concept of shining is very much kind of like Palm Clementief's character in like he's kind of you're very like right you're like an empath, and so you kind of absorb what people are feeling, and it's not just reading someone's mind. It's very I think you take on what they're feeling.
Yeah.
And so I think that's, as a 5-year-old, you don't understand emotions like betrayal and sexual attraction and stuff like that. You don't understand that, and it's like a 5-year-old shouldn't have to.
Absolutely.
That probably messes you up a bit.
Yeah, and that reminds me of the part in one of the a really great bit of comic relief is when he sees the woman at the hotel and like shines that she says that she wants to get into the bellboy's pants or something.
Right.
He's like, and he asks Dick like, "What does he mean when she wants his pants?
Why would she want his pants?"
That was very charming.
That was really funny.
It was good.
Yeah.
But also with the hornet's nest or the wasp nest, that is also a great like. It's early enough in the book that it's like an introduction to the fractured family aspect that I talked about in non-spoilers. Mm-hmm. But it's such a good way to just like introduce that wedge that the hotel is going to forge throughout this family dynamic. Mm. I really appreciated it for that. It's kind of a slow build and everything. The other big difference is the topiary animals,
right?
Which, when reading it this time, I was like, wow, okay. So, like I remember this being a part of the Shining novel, but I think this, like I just equated it this time to the Weeping Angels in Doctor Who.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, Doctor Who kind of, took a nod from Steve. I wonder if that was an intentional thing when they created the Weeping Angels. But,
yeah, I wonder.
But how did you feel about the topiary animals in the book?
Pretty good. I didn't really remember that much about them. I just remembered I had forgot. I thought they were more. What am I trying to say? I thought that Danny was the one who discovered them.
Oh, okay.
As opposed to Jack. I completely forgot about that. And so that was kind of, I remember it being scarier in the book than it actually was.
Okay.
Because I think, as a 12-year-old, I was a little bit more in tune with Danny than I was with Jack.
Sure.
And so I remember Danny being terrified, and I thought that Danny was scared of the topiary animals.
Yeah.
But that was just I misremembered basically. So yeah, that was just, I kind of forgot about that, or like I didn't see it coming as well. I remembered that the topiary animals move and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it wasn't as, it was eerie more than anything. And I had forgotten that like at the end when Dick Halloran rides up there, he's essentially attacked by them. I was like, holy shit, I didn't remember this at all.
I forgot about that too.
That's crazy. And I was like, no wonder they didn't put it in the movie. How the hell were they going to do that back in, with 1977 technology or 1980? 1980 technology. How they didn't have CGI, so that would have probably looked pretty shitty.
Yeah.
To try to capture that. So.
Spoiler for the miniseries review, but it doesn't look that good in 97.
Yeah. I don't really remember that miniseries, but
yeah, I'm looking forward to rewatching it.
Yeah.
The topiary animals, like it's a very interesting. Like I found it particularly frightening, more so than a hedge maze, honestly.
Okay.
As a concept, I find it more frightening that these animals come to life, or these plant animals come to life. Mm-hmm. It's just like the way that it's described, like. I was really in tune with the horror aspect of that. So yeah, and yeah, I don't blame Kubrick for not including them, because like you said, I don't see how you can incorporate that in the 1980s.
Yeah,
without being hokey.
I still liked the hedge maze in the movie. I think it also, one of the reasons why I like it, having seen the movie as an adult, is I think it kind of amplifies the idea of isolation, because you get lost in there easily, which isolation is a plot device that I've mentioned many times is one of my favorite plot devices in a story. I really enjoy isolation, and then this novel and the movie use that to great effect. But I feel like I feel it more in the movie than I do in the book, actually, which is kind of interesting. I think it's just maybe the visuals really bring it home. But obviously, I mean, it's brought up tons of times in the book, and I think one of the things that's a drawback in the movie is that Dick Hallorann, when he comes to the rescue of Danny and Wendy, he just kind of shows up. Like he flies from Florida, and you see him get to like Denver or Boulder or whatever, and then you see him renting a car, and then you don't see him again until he's at the hotel. Where in the novel, there's you get to experience his journey, and it really illustrates just how isolated they are, and just how treacherous it is to reach or leave the hotel and get to civilization. So I mean, it's in that respect, it's realized really well. But I just think the visuals, and I think it's the snow too. Like obviously it's mentioned in the book quite a bit, but just the drifting snow that they do in the movie on the exterior shots is really eerie, and it's just, there's something about it that it causes tension, I think.
Totally.
Because snow is just such an inconvenience, but when it gets to that level, it's dangerous.
Absolutely. And I really like your comparison or your analysis of the hedge maze in the movie and everything, because that is very true. It is very isolating.
I don't know if that was an intentional thing, if that's what they're going for, but
I feel like anything Kubrick does in the movie is intentional.
That's true.
So I think that was definitely the case.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the Dick Hallorann's journey to the Overlook in the book, it's funny because when I read it as a kid, or as a teenager, maybe I'm misremembering, or maybe I'm just thinking that maybe this is probably something that teenage Matt would have thought, but that at the time felt like dragging it down.
Oh, really?
I just want to see, Jack butcher his family. But like reading it as an adult, it's like I totally got that. Like the way that it accentuates the isolation of the family and how much effort it takes to get to the Overlook. Like, right. Dick Hallorann has no idea what he's getting into. And I love the way that it's described, like him getting just knocked out with the roque mallet.
Right.
And like the way, like there's little bits and pieces as the book progresses that he is concussed essentially. Throughout the rest of the book, and it's like the way that King writes that is just really well done. It's not like overt or anything. It's not like he's stumbling around or anything. But like when you get inside that character's head, it's like it's kind of fractured a little bit or fragmented,
cloudy.
Yeah, and it's really well done in terms of writing.
Yeah.
So what did you think of Jack's meltdown and everything, and the seduction of the hotel?
Yeah, that was again, that's sort of missing from the movie, I think. If I haven't watched the movie in a while either, but I do have a better memory of it. I feel like in the movie he just goes crazy.
Yeah.
Whereas in the book he kind of has a goal.
Yeah.
Like it's he has to, I don't know, kind of, he wants to be a part of the club, essentially. And they seduce him, the hotel seduces him into that. And I like that better than the movie. I think the movie's great in that respect. Like, I think it's scary and it's frankly fascinating to watch Jack Nicholson,
perform.
Fall into that, and go crazy. It's great to watch, and it's great theater. But I think what happens in the novel is a little more interesting.
Absolutely.
And maybe, I don't know if I want to use the word realistic, because we're talking about essentially a conscious hotel, which doesn't make any sense. But what I'm saying, it's
a more nuanced kind of progression.
Nuanced. That's a great word for it. It's more interesting, frankly, and it's a better way to get to where the movie gets, or you know what I'm saying. It's a better way to get to that ending, I think.
Yes,
really well done. And again, like I said, tons of credit to Campbell Scott. Like that. Oh, yeah. Like I said, just the difference. He has such a like, hey Doc, how you doing? Like such a normal dad voice,
right?
And then at the end, he's just pure grit and just anger and come take your medicine. That's just so. He did a great job,
phenomenal.
And I bet his voice was just. I bet his throat was hurting because of all like the grumbling and yelling he had to do.
It always it boggles my mind just this is a tangent, but what the production process must be like to record an audiobook.
Yeah.
Because like we just sit here and we bullshit on the microphone for a couple hours and then release it. It's just like I can't imagine like the production of like it is a performance and
absolutely
through and through it's a performance. But like just in terms of like I can't, as someone who produces audio content for the internet, I can't imagine the production value that goes into doing an audiobook, like setting aside like when to record, like what parts and how to direct it. Like I can't fathom it. But
me either.
Yeah, but the seduction of Jack Torrance by the hotel is so gripping to me. I think I've probably said it on this podcast before, but I love the way that it's seducing him for his like writer instincts. Like it's showing him the history of the hotel, like the records and everything, and I love how kind of a complete dick he is to Ullman because he hates Ullman.
Yeah.
When he calls him, he's like, "I'm going to write a book and expose everything about this little hotel." It's such an interesting, because that's a good way to kind of show his unhinged kind of frame of mind,
right?
To an extent,
but at that point, he hasn't lost it yet.
Exactly.
He's still
a window into.
He's still very much in control. He just feels like it's a justified act.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I just love. I love that idea. Like I remember just thinking like how kind of unnerving it is, like having the history of it, and it's kind of different from. Okay, I'll say this. So it's interesting because I've heard on like other podcasts that it kind of analyze King, that it's interesting to read the first handful of books that he had published, because it's very much a kind of an interesting progression as his publications come about. And this was the first book I read of King.
Okay.
But so like if you look at his bibliography, like you have Carrie, Salem's Lot, Rage, The Shining, and then eventually way down there at number 22 is It. But so like Carrie is just kind of like a town with the central focus of these teenagers, and particularly Carrie White. And then Salem's Lot is a town that's more town-wide and everything. Mm-hmm. And then The Shining is just a complete entity of a hotel. It's just interesting that it's like he's creating these monsters in these different ways. And I think another like other books that he had was like Cujo's a monster kind of thing, and it kind of all leads up to It being the ultimate monster story of his. I don't know where I was going with that, but the seduction of Jack Torrance is really great in the book, and I love the kind of reveal or the way that it's played with, that it's like and I don't feel like it's demonstrated or even in the movie, I can't remember, but the way that it's kind of revealed that like Jack wants to be the chosen one. He believes he is like being groomed for lack of a better word, management for the hotel. Right. Whereas he's really a means to an end, that they really want Danny for his shining abilities.
Right.
How did you feel about that aspect of it? How did you feel about it?
I had really forgotten about that completely. That the hotel was actually after Danny, which is again I think lost in the movie, or it's not in the movie at all.
Yeah, I don't remember if it's communicated really at all.
I don't think it is,
because like you said, it's the Jack Torrance show.
Right. And what's cool about that aspect of the book is that I think it kind of makes. In a way, Danny is really the main character of the book.
Yeah.
I mean, everything is focused through the lens of, or a lot of it is focused through the lens of Jack Torrance. Mm-hmm. But I feel like Danny is kind of the main character. I mean, it's he's the most important character, I would say, because like I said, that's what the hotel's really after. And he, you know, that's the reason why Dick Halloran is such a important character in the book, is that he's an adult who also has the ability to shine.
Yeah.
But he tells the audience through dialogue and through you know, exploration and stuff like that of the novel that Danny is way more powerful, if you will,
right,
with that ability than he is. And so it amplifies how and demonstrates how powerful Danny is, essentially. And it makes him so much more important than I remembered. Yeah. I had completely forgotten about that, and I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. If you just think about the implications, if the hotel did get their hands on his abilities, and, you know, if in a sense this kid would become a ghost in a way, or at least his consciousness would, however you want to describe, you know, ethereal things like that.
Right.
This poor 5-year-old would essentially be held captive by this hotel, essentially for eternity. You know what I'm saying? That's terrifying.
Yeah, 100%. And what do you think was the ultimate goal of the Overlook? Like, why did they want Danny for his shining capabilities and everything? Was it to ensure that the spirits of the hotel and the history of the hotel, like, lives on, like, utilizing that power to, like, let it live on in eternity? Or was there something else communicated that I just missed?
I guess so. I don't think there's ever explicit desires that are laid out. Their goal was laid out, that they want Danny and that his abilities would be valuable, but I don't know to what extent.
Same here, and I love the book for that. I really do.
But you can kind of run with that.
Yeah.
I mean, you can think, you know, okay, well, essentially the hotel would have the ability to shine.
Yeah.
And it already has the ability to kind of manipulate, which we can talk about this more, but I had completely forgotten about the fact that Dick Halloran lives and sort of gets them out of there, but they stop at that shed first, and he kind of starts to get, like, coaxed or seduced a little bit by the hotel, and almost, you know, he almost goes down that path that Jack was on. Imagine if the hotel had the shine. It could attract all these people. It would almost be like the Dark Tower, where you know, they're in the Kala, they're collecting all these you know, these people who have these abilities and stuff like that. You know, it would almost be like that. It's sort of an extension of that story.
And then they'll make a shitty movie where they refer to their telepathic abilities as a shine.
Let's not go down that road.
Let's not.
But yeah, like the implications of that, like I said, you can let your imagination kind of run with that. It would almost be like the Overlook Hotel would be like a beacon to attract people to it and do whatever the hell they want with them.
And I love that, and I love that that's not, like you said, it's like we both said, it's kind of open to interpretation. And I love it for that, because otherwise it would double down on just stakes. Like it would create, like if he had created this scenario where it's like, oh, they want Danny because they want his ability so that they can bring in people and kill them and everything, or like it'll bring about like so much death and destruction and everything. Like, no, it's just in the book, it's communicated that they want Danny and he has a strong shining ability, and that's all we get. And we just leave that up to interpretation. I love the book for that, because otherwise it would just put unnecessary stakes in a story that was already intense. What is she doing?
I don't know.
She's so pretty. Anyway, so yeah, I love it for that. Let's see, what else can we talk about in spoilers? The boiler?
Yeah, the boiler.
Yeah.
I did remember that, and that the hotel blew up.
One of my big pet peeves in pop culture, which can be a new segment on the podcast, pet peeves in pop culture.
Yeah.
But there's an episode of Friends from like in the early days of the TV show Friends where where Rachel and Joey like okay, the scenario is that Rachel gets something out of Joey's freezer and finds a copy of The Shining, and she takes it out and is like, why is there a copy of The Shining in the freezer? And then he said, oh, I was reading it and I got scared, so I put it in the freezer. Which is great.
Yeah.
But the plot of the episode is that they decide, like, she's like, she doesn't understand how it can be like that freaky and everything, so he has her read it, and he reads Little Women, which is her favorite book. Mm-hmm. And so they read, and as the story progresses, they get more into each book and everything. And then at the end of the episode, toward the end of the episode, they have some kind of fight or something, or she accidentally spoils Little Women, and he intentionally spoils the ending of The Shining. Mm-hmm. And he says, like, I can't remember exactly what he says, but he does say, like, Jack ends up in the hotel, and the boiler explodes and kills the father and kills him. And one of my big pet peeves is that, like, on the internet and stuff, like, if you read trivia for, like, that particular episode, they're like, Joey spoils The Shining, but it's actually the movie version and not the book. And it's like, no, it's not, because he says the boiler explodes. Like,
right.
Like, that's not, like, that's inaccurate trivia.
That never happens in the movie.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do, I do like that. It kind of a small tangent, even more so than the tangent I'm already on. When Rachel gives away a major spoiler in Little Women, Joey gets shocked and, like, sad and everything, and then Ross, or he's like, is that really what happens? And then Rachel says something, and then Ross looks at her and is like, he's asking if you just spoiled the only book he's ever loved that didn't star Jack Nicholson. So I don't know. I like that line. But anyway, so yeah, the whole boiler thing, the kind of ticking time bomb of that. And then also I want to highlight the moment when I think they're on the third floor, and the Jack thing is haunting Danny and going after him. There's a moment that this isn't. I wish that Kubrick had incorporated this in some way. But there's a moment where Jack comes back and he, like, tells him, like, get out of the hotel. Like, it's fine. I'm
right.
Like, there's a slight reprieve where Jack comes back,
which is it was, like, kind of heartbreaking.
Very heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Like, that's one of the biggest and most emotionally intense moments of the book for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just really good. So how'd you feel about the whole climax of the book and the boiler blowing up?
I prefer it very much to the movie. Mm-hmm. Way better than the movie. Although I think there's an eeriness to the idea in the movie that the hotel survives.
Yeah.
Let me take that again, because I'm going through puberty.
Sure. On Anthology, my voice kept cracking, and I just ran with it. And I was like, my voice keeps cracking. I'm going to hit puberty someday, I swear. But anyway, sorry.
I think there is an eeriness to the ending in the movie where the hotel essentially survives and continues, presumably, to haunt people and do what it does. So there is something to that, but I just prefer the conclusiveness or whatever, how conclusive it is in the book, and I think it's a little more happy in that regard, more of a happy ending in the book, especially, they make it to. They move to Maine, and they're friends with Dick and all that stuff, and Danny's doing better. But yeah, the actual climax is really, really satisfying, and I loved the ticking time bomb of the boiler, like you said. I almost wish it was referenced or mentioned a few more times, to where it would actually kind of be like a ticking clock. Right. But it's more like Danny kind of remembers about it or something like that. And then, like, half a chapter later, 10 pages later, it blows up or whatever. Yeah. But it's still kind of a surprise, like, oh crap, yeah, the boiler. I forgot all about the boiler. Right. Which, of course, I had remembered it from when I read it the first time. But
you'll remember the thing your father forgets or something like that.
Yeah, there you go. Nice, yeah, awesome. But yeah, that was super satisfying. And again, I had forgotten about the whole part where I think it was Dick Halloran, when the hotel explodes, he sees like a
Oh yeah,
a darkness or a blackness sort of escape,
like an entity.
Yeah. And I think he said it looked like a swarm of wasps.
Yes, that was so great.
That I had completely forgotten about that, and I was like, it's literally like something was occupying the wall. The evil or the darkness in that hotel was literally occupying the structure.
Yep.
And was a physical thing that was like occupying the structure. And I kind of when I read that moment in the book, I was like, I hope that darkness occupies something else and we get another story from Stephen King. I don't know if that's what Dr. Sleep is. I don't know. I know almost nothing about Dr. Sleep.
Right. Same. I know some things, but for the most part, nothing.
Right. So I don't know. I kind of hope that's a thing. Like that was a really cool part of the story that I completely forgot. It sort of made me think of Dick Halloran pops up in It, as a young man.
In the flashback?
And, it made me think of, because in the flashback in It, he's a young man and there's a fire, and he sees an entity, the entity from It, and it sort of made me think of that, and it would have been cool. Obviously, it was written years after The Shining, but it would have been cool if those two moments seemed linked or seemed similar to me. I don't know why. Dick Halloran coming to literally setting his eyes on evil. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Seeing a physical representation of something evil. He sees does he see like a giant bird? What does he see in It? Right. I think it's like a giant bird flying away.
That sounds right.
I can't remember, but it made me. I've only read it once, and it was a couple years ago. Yeah. But yeah, those two scenes, that's what came to mind when I read that. And I loved that juxtaposition, or just, as a fan of Stephen King, making that link was fun. And like I said, I hope that darkness pops up somewhere else. Maybe it has. I don't know. Maybe he has it in another book, and I just don't know about it. But
we'll find out eventually.
We will. Yeah.
Probably. Probably, as long as we keep doing this.
Right. So, but anyways, that was a really good ending. Great ending.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
And kind of the final thing, we can kind of start winding down a little bit. Tony.
We haven't mentioned that at all.
We haven't talked about that at all.
Yeah.
How do you feel about The Shining and Tony in The Shining?
Sort of an interesting plot device. I think it was more than anything, it was a means for the adults to kind of understand how special Danny is, and that he has an ability
kind of to personify it a little bit.
Right. But it's sort of, I feel like it was sort of an empty, other than that, as far as the characterization of Danny, I feel like it was sort of an empty thing. Like I don't think it really went anywhere.
Yeah.
It was Tony was like a means for foreshadowing, which I'm not a fan of foreshadowing hardly at all. I don't care for it. And it was just, Danny, be careful. And like, that's all it was. And it really wasn't that. I mean, it's cool that he has that ability or whatever, and I think it demonstrated just how special he is in that regards.
Right.
But I didn't care for it as much as I thought I would. Yeah, that's all I really have to say about it. I read some stuff. Yeah. I was reading some research online about the book and the movie a little bit and some trivia, and someone said that Tony is Danny's future self talking to him.
Yes,
and I don't know if that's what Dr. Sleep is. That's the plot of Dr. Sleep.
I don't think so.
Is it expressed in the book that it's him?
No, it is something that I think stems from the miniseries, which King.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which we'll talk about in a couple weeks.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
Sorry for the spoiler. But no, that's an intriguing concept.
Yeah, it is.
But it's not explored as full. Like if that was like a big point of the story, it would have landed more with me. Like if it was in the book at all, or was a significant part of the miniseries, it would have landed for me a lot better than it did.
Well, and if he has that ability, why is it so vague?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, he's obviously an incredibly powerful shiner, whatever you want to call him. So you would think that if he has the ability to send messages from the future to his young self, it would be pretty damn clear what he's trying to convey. Even if it's an adult trying to talk to a 5-year-old, you would think he could, I don't know. And there's a very interesting moment where at the end, I think it's in the denouement as opposed to the climax, is that Danny sort of admits to himself that he knew that was going to happen, or that he knew that going to the Overlook was really dangerous, and that it was going to end badly, which I thought was a really cool moment that I didn't remember at all from when I read it previously. But I thought that was just, it's one of those moments where it's a 5-year-old coming to a realization that a 5-year-old should not have to come to.
Exactly.
That he made a huge mistake or whatever, that he put himself in that situation, and he's essentially experiencing deep regret, I think.
Right.
That he feels responsible in a way for his father's death and things like that, and that's again heartbreaking and sad. But yeah, anyways, I got a little off track there. But,
no, that's fine.
I'm curious to see. I really want to read Dr. Sleep and watch the miniseries and expand on some of the ideas that some of the trivia and stuff that I read for the book. So
yeah, that's why I'm really excited about this whole project we're doing.
Me too.
That is basically our review of The Shining. So Tiny, since this is a novel review in our podcast here, we have our top 19 King novels listed on the show notes of every episode as well as on the website. So I'll kind of go first and talk a little bit about it. So I had listed on my top 19 The Shining at number 7. To refresh everyone's memory, number 1 was 11/22/63. Number 2 was It. Number 3 was Misery. Number 4 was The Stand. Number 5 was A Drawing of the Three. Number 6 was The Dark Tower 7. And number 7 was The Shining. Number 8, Pet Sematary, and so on and so forth. Check that out at the show notes on the podcast. So I think I would want, after listening to it this time, I want to put The Shining in at number 5.
Okay.
Above Dark Tower 2 and Dark Tower 7.
Wow, so you'd have no Dark Tower movies in your top 5.
That's what I'm thinking of. And I kind of want to reorganize that because I want to put Drawing of the Three a little bit higher.
Okay.
So I may need to revamp the whole system. But because I do have all 7. I don't have the Win Through the Keyhole on my top 19, but I do have all 7 Dark Tower books on it. But I don't know, King has just so many incredible stuff.
Oh yeah,
it's really hard to.
I don't think there's anything wrong with your list. I think it's great. I'm just a little surprised at that. That's all.
I am too. Yeah, whenever we get around to doing our Dark Tower episodes, I'll probably juggle it there. But as of right now, my top 5 are going to be 11/22/63, It, Misery, The Stand, and The Shining.
Nice.
Yeah. So Tiny, how does it rank with yours? Does it stay the same, and where was it before? Where is it now?
So presently, I have the Dark Tower book 7 at number 1, followed by Misery, then The Stand, and then I have The Shining at number 4. I think I want to just keep it there.
Nice.
I don't think I want to move it. I think it
it's
held
a good
up.
Spot.
Yeah, it held up. Great. I think it definitely exceeded my memory of it, which was kind of destined to happen. Sure. Like I said, I read it 20 years ago as a 12-year-old. But I think I initially put it so high on that list strictly because of, obviously it's a great book, but just the vivid memory I have of staying up late that school night and reading about Danny going into room 217.
Yeah. And
I think the rest of that book, I read it in less than a week, which when I was 12 years old, that was an accomplishment.
Right.
Not as big of a, I read for this episode when we were recording about it, I read the book in a week, basically, which I only listened to it as I was commuting for work.
God, that's awesome.
And so that's really fast. Yeah. Normally I would have thrown in a podcast or two, and it would have taken 2 to 3 weeks, just radio time or whatever. But I was so into the book, it was okay, I got a half hour till I get to this other place. I'm going to just listen to The Shining a little bit. And I was super into it. So I think basically this reread of it as an adult solidified my number 4 choice. Like that was sort of a predictive choice for me to put it at number 4 on my list, because I was like, I'm pretty sure I love that book, and but all I have is the context of reading it as a 12-year-old.
Right.
So it was sort of a predictive placing at the number 4 slot, but I think I want to keep it there. And I think The Stand, Misery, and Dark Tower 7 placing ahead of it are all pretty good. The Stand and Misery I both need to I need to reread all of them.
Yeah. It's funny because I relatively recently re-listened to The Stand, and I may need to juggle that a little bit. Maybe I'll put The Dark Tower 2. Maybe I'll swap Drawing of the Three and The Stand. Okay. But as of right now, I'm happy with where it is on the list.
That's cool. That's cool.
So yeah, I think that'll do it for this episode then. Next time we're going to talk about Stanley Kubrick's The Shining movie from 1980. And then after that, we're going to do the miniseries, and then Dr. Sleep the novel, and then Dr. Sleep the movie that comes out November 3rd or 6th or something like that.
Awesome.
So very excited.
It's cool that we can have like a whole, like you said, like a whole series about this. We're going to have 5 episodes.
It's so awesome.
That's great.
And we're recording them with so much head time.
I know.
Very good.
Yeah, we can release it all sequentially.
Yes, I'm so excited about that. And yeah, to kind of, do we want to talk about the Dr. Sleep trailer, or just leave it be?
I'd say leave it be for now.
Okay, cool. Yeah, will do. So yeah, that'll do it for this episode of Tower Junkies. Once again, if you want to help support the show and get access to special recordings specifically for Patreon supporters, go to patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Minimum donation of $1 per month, and you'll get access to that RSS feed. Basically, if you don't, I kind of feel like I've taken a little bit of liberties with describing like the actual Patreon thing, because I just kind of assume that everyone knows how RSS feeds work. Yeah. But basically, you'll get a special link that's tailor-made just for you if you support us on Patreon, that you copy that into your podcatcher, like go to add podcast, just copy the link. It'll show up with the special Patreon feed, and right there we have tons of stuff. We have like 35 episodes as of this recording. By the time this episode actually airs, we'll have over 40 there for you. It's all it's fun stuff with some fun stuff with like occasional like actual pertinent content. But it's a lot of fun. So check that out at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Also check out our other shows, The Obsessive Viewer over at obsessiveviewer.com, and also Anthology at anthologypod.com. We're tiny, like a few months ago at this point, you were a guest on Anthology to talk about the Twilight Zone Season 1 of Jordan Peele's Twilight Zone. Yep. Super fun episode. I released it, and it's a lot of fun. Nice. So thank you for coming on for that. So having said all that, it is still early morning, so we've got our whole day ahead of us. This is exciting. Yep. So all right, well, thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. And I forgot the sign off. Damn it. Long days and pleasant nights,
and may you have twice the number.
There we go. And now, here's a short clip from our Patreon-exclusive RSS feed. To hear the full clip and more exclusive Patreon content, go to patreon.com/obsessiveviewer and become a patron at the minimum rate of $1 per month. Thank you, and enjoy. I was thinking about that the other day, that it's funny because when you... and this is such a 90s stand-up comedy type of routine. The difference between dogs and cats are when you play with a dog and like you have a toy and you like play fetch with them, they're just like, oh my god, toy! Oh my god, I'm a dumb dog! Ah, it's a toy. But like when you have a toy and you throw it for a cat, it's like they're like, I'm in murder mode. I'm going to destroy this thing. I'm training for the ultimate hunting, and everything, because cats are the apex predators of the animal kingdom. Right. Domesticated animal kingdom. Okay. But they're the cutest little babies. We can go right into Patreon, I guess.
Tower Junkies is edited and produced by Matt Hurt and presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. For a full archive of our episodes, go to TowerJunkiesPod.com/archive. You can also like our Facebook page at facebook.com/TowerJunkiesPod and follow us on Twitter at TowerJunkiesPod. If you enjoy the show, please take a couple minutes to leave us a rating and a quick review on Apple Podcasts. This is the easiest way to support what we do, and all it costs is just a little bit of your time. If you'd like to donate to the podcast, you can make a PayPal donation at TowerJunkiesPod.com/donate, or support us on Patreon for recurring donations and access to commentary tracks and B-roll audio recorded exclusively for patrons at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Every donation goes toward paying the fees to keep the podcast running and is greatly appreciated. For official Obsessive Viewer merch, including shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more, visit our TeePublic store. You can find a link to the store in the show notes of this episode and at obsessiveviewer.com/donate. Or you can simply search for Obsessive Viewer at teepublic.com. For information about our annual live event showcasing short horror films from local filmmakers, check out shocktoberinirvington.com. And for an archive of all our events, as well as news about potential future events, head over to obsessiveviewer.com/live. For more podcast content, you can find our flagship movie and TV review and discussion show, The Obsessive Viewer Podcast, at obsessiveviewer.com and on Twitter at obsessiveviewer. You can also find Anthology, Matt's solo podcast covering The Twilight Zone, and other classic and contemporary science fiction anthology TV shows at anthologypod.com and OV Anthology Pod on Twitter. And finally, check out The Secular Perspective, Tiny's side project podcast, which tackles current events and life's big questions from the perspective of secular hosts Chad and Amanda at thesecularperspective.com. Music for the podcast is provided with permission from Fingers T on YouTube. Additional bumper music is provided courtesy of As Good As It Gets, which can be found at facebook.com/asgoodasitgetsband. Thank you so much for listening. Long days and pleasant nights.
Kitty!